This is Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, the snowed in, booed up, insightful, responsible voice of reason, Mr. Nick Hodge, and this is episode 6 of Bizarro World. Nick, how are you, sir?
I'm a bit fed up with the outrage culture, Gerardo, but feeling good. Snowed in, as you said. Not quite. I've had the plow and the front end loader out. My parents are here visiting for the first time in 7 months, so excited to get to the weekend. And it was a busy week, so excited to talk to you about it. What were you gonna say?
I like it. I said you were booed up. You got your wife, you got your little girls, you got family in town. A lot of love going on. Happy belated Valentine's Day.
And to you as well. I hope you had a good one with your sweetheart. We had some cards and flowers. You know how it goes.
Absolutely. We did, early in the day, the wife went to the school, hung out with our 10-year-old, did the responsible parent thing, evening time, a little wine, a little dinner, some jacuzzi action, a couples massage. It was absolutely fantastic and reinvigorating, to say the least. So here we are.
My daughter had a Valentine's party at she's in like the 2-year-old group at her little preschool thing that she goes to a couple of days a week. So we took the grandparents over there yesterday, and good Lord, that's a lot of kids with chocolate smeared all over their face.
It gets worse. Yeah, and I have boys, you have girls, so I imagine that you're gonna deal with a little bit more of that than I had to. But all fun stuff. We're lucky to be able to do it.
Conceal carry.
Absolutely. Keep it there. So listen, there's a lot going on. Let's start with markets. Later on, I want to talk about El Chapo was found guilty to the surprise of nobody. I'd love to get your thoughts on Amazon pulling out of New York. We'll talk some Grammys, but let's start with the markets, right? That's kind of our bread and butter. Let's start with Nemaska Lithium. Junior Resource Stock Fuckery of the Week award is what I'm saying. The stock has been down over 60% the past several days. It turns out that the company with a market cap of about $300 million, and that's fluid, by the way, underestimated its project construction cost by 375 million Canadian. This is
just a bit.
Yeah.
Just a bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
It caught my attention. I don't know if you were done talking about it, but look, that's a lot of money, and it's well over $250 million. And just 3 months ago in November, the management team of Nemaska, they're developing a hard rock spodumene lithium project in Canada, said, everything's going well. Everything is going according to plan. And you have got to be born in the dark this morning to believe that management didn't know they needed another $250 million 3 months ago. And so I took to Twitter, called this out immediately when the stock was down 35%. I actually hadn't looked again. I didn't know it was down 60%. And this guy, I don't even know his name, had the audacity to tell me to calm down. He told me to go read the Seth material. I didn't even know what the Seth material was. I had to Google it. But basically, he was telling me I needed to calm down my inner self and stop getting worked up so much about these stocks. And I didn't even reply to him, but I'll reply to him now. And I don't know what you're living on, dude, but this management team clearly knew what was going on. If you're not getting worked up like this, then you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Absolutely. And the CEO, his quote was, "The revised overall project cost reflects a more precise outlook on installation cost and other key variables to the completion of our project. We now have a better understanding on the remaining scope of the project, estimated budget, and current market conditions." I mean, if that's not, the biggest ball of, I'll leave it there. I think people should be furious. This is why mining gets a bad rap. We have a mega trend, and I want to talk about that later on. Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who I am fond of, testified recently about the importance of critical metals in this country. But, it's stuff like this that makes people frown on the industry and makes capital scarce, right? I mean, it just is what it is.
Well, 100%, and it's sad on that front because it's not like it was a bad project. I mean, it's one that I've looked at a couple times. It's one that I've asked you your opinion of. I've thought about either buying shares or recommending it, though I never did either of those things, thank goodness. And Yeah, it was supposedly a successful story, a good mining story, right? We're building a new project. It's in Canada. It's hard rock lithium. It's going to help the adoption of clean tech and electric cars, and then something like this happens where, yeah, just complete, it's just complete
Yeah,
nonsense.
and to add to that, and to be perfectly blunt, I had this on as a trade in my trader service, based on the fact that they had secured, according to them, all of the funding they were going to need, and they had the support of the government. So, my thinking, of course, is you have a great partner, deep pocketed partner, you have the support of the government, that takes care of the jurisdiction risk. You're fully funded, just execute, right? It's a time thing. I know that the megatrend is real. I know that this is something that is going to become, no pun intended, more critical. I mean, how you fuck this up is beyond me. But let's move on.
Okay.
Let's talk more stocks. I want to play a game this week.
Okay.
Before we play the game, though, I do want to highlight a couple of companies. One in particular that's doing it the right way. We've seen explorers come back to the market. Even the quality ones, right? The Riversides of the world and the Cordobas of the world, quality as far as rocks there, not share structure. But they're having issue full warrants, right? And the one company that stood out to me this last week was Revival Gold. You've talked about Hugh Agro in the past, CEO of Revival Gold, project in Idaho, 2 million ounce head start, gold project, lots of exploration upside. But they did a financing, at a slight discount to the market, zero warrant. It hasn't closed yet. It's $5 million. I know they got lots of institutional interest, long-term shareholders. You've helped raise money in the past through one of your services. Thoughts on Revival Gold and the state of the financing market out there?
I think I said that Revival in the letter this week has finally left the non-brokered nest. They are raising real money. They're doing it without a warrant. One thing that stuck out to me was that even though the raise that they're doing is at 72 cents, the shares held up relatively well at 80 cents or above. That speaks to the quality of the shareholder base and the quality of the asset that investors aren't willing to sell the shares down to participate in the financing. Well done. And like you said, some other financings have had to come with a full warrant. Cordoba announced a $2 million financing yesterday, 10 cents with a 12-cent full warrant. So you can be in the money in your warrant if the stock goes up 2 cents from the financing price, which is a sweetheart deal if you're investing for the first time, but maybe not so much if you've seen Cordoba go from $1.25 down to 10 cents as Robert Friedland raped and pillaged. And then just generally speaking, still tough out there for sure. I run a private placement newsletter, and so I see the response of investors willing to put money into deals and how much and how often. And I still don't think we're over the cannabis thing. I think resource investors' attention is still fragmented by cannabis, especially in the United States and Canada. And I've talked to some people recently who have just all but given up trying to raise money in North America and instead are going to Europe and Australia and places like that and finding it easier to raise capital specifically for resource stocks. So nutshell version as I see it is that.
Yep, I agree. And, I've read a couple of news releases the past week that I privately thought sounded like funerals. I mean, holy smokes, they just sounded depressed. Talking about sweetheart deals, Gainey Capital, a company that I followed because I like the rocks. I like the exploration upside. They're trading at 11 cents today and, they're raising money at a nickel with a 10
At 5 cents.
So again, if you're an investor or speculator for the first time and you have access, and again, we did help provide access through one of our services. That's an instant double if it holds up, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this is the time to be buying, right? A continued long bottoming of the resource sector, excuse me, with a bull market barreling towards us as I see it. And so these are those deals you're going to want in 18, 24 months. I expect to be exercising some of those warrants full bore.
Agreed. And if these companies hit, I mean, let's be clear, they're exploring. If they hit, then that's where you get the 10 baggers. That's how it's done. So you got to have the wherewithal in this market to play the long game and stay on top of management and hold them accountable. But, you know, if you're scared to be down 30-40%, this is not the space for you.
I mean, that's where we are. We're down 30-40% more in some cases. I've heard from subscribers, and like you say, it's very speculative. It's high risk. Yeah, really only a space for high risk capital.
All right, let's play a game. It's a Valentine's Day version, the stock version of Marry, Date, Kill. And I changed the middle word for those that are easily offended.
I was going to say that's not what this game is called.
That's what we're going to call it this time. So let's play Marry, Date, Kill. You in?
I'm in, and I didn't prepare, so this is going to be completely off the cuff and fun.
Most of this is. So, all right. Tesla, Hydro 66, Hive. And by the way, hashtag all those.
You first or me, or am I the only one playing the game?
I came up with the game, so you should be the only one that has to respond, but I'll play.
All right. I'll play. All right. Tesla, Hydro 66 Holdings, Hive. We're going to kill Hive. I've stood outside their facility in the Swedish Laplands, and it doesn't look great. It's an old industrial hangar, rust on the building. I know for a fact that Hive doesn't own the building, so when you buy Hive, you're not buying brick and mortar assets. They lease the building. As I recall, I think they even lease some of the machines that they used to mine, so they might not own those. And just the G&A with Hive, if you're not familiar, has just been out of control. The earnings have not been good. The coins that they've held on their balance sheet have clearly just been decimated in value as the bottom has fallen out of the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So Hive is dead. I think we date Tesla because I don't know how the long term is going to turn out for Tesla yet, but the stock is pretty volatile, and Elon Musk seems to be able to move the stock almost at will. So it's a pretty good trading vehicle in that respect. So let's date Tesla on and off. And then if you're looking for a long-term play in the data storage, co-location, business with a little sort of a crypto kicker, then I think you marry Hydro 66 for the long term. They're building out the world's largest, cleanest, greenest data centers in Sweden, super redundant power, 100% clean powered by the hydro capacity in the area, hence the name of the company itself. Have taken a tour there. The facilities are brand new. They're pouring concrete for more when you were there, Gerardo, last fall. And just a crack team with Anne Graff at the helm there, who I was highly, highly impressed by. And I'll shut up because I'm starting to ramble, but there.
No,
Kill
I
Hive,
thought that was
date
well
Tesla,
said.
marry Hydro.
I love it. You know what a therapist would tell you?
What's that?
It's interesting that you killed the old decrepit building in Hive. You dated the bipolar volatile Tesla. And you wanted to marry the new young thing in Hydro. But that's just what I think a therapist would say.
It was a half my age plus 7. Is that the rule?
All right, you want to do the Idaho version? I got one more for you.
Yeah, you're going to make me offend people. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So, marry, date, still a 4-letter word. Marry, date, kill, Idaho version. We're going to go Midas gold, Revival gold, and Otis gold. And before we hurt feelings, because we will, we like all three companies. I like all three companies. I like the management. They're at different stages in their development cycle. So we'll start there, and then we'll get to the offending.
All right, here we go. Let's get the death over with first. We're going to kill Otis. They're not on a firm path yet. They just had to sell a bunch of shares that they own in Revival to raise some cash. And they're just haven't proven to be quite there yet. Certainly not at the level of Revival and Midas. So let's move on. This is going to be a really tough choice between Midas and Revival. Here's how I'm framing it in my mind. I think we I think we date Midas because I'm not sure how long the relationship is going to be. Hopefully, with any luck, by the time we get a permit and a construction decision in 2020, 2021-ish, we can get taken out by Barrick, and that'll be the end of the relationship. So, like call that short term in the mining world, courtship. And then I guess you kind of have to marry Revival because they're only at 2 million ounces. We're looking to 3. There could be new properties in the future. There's going to be a construction decision, and you might have to allow a bit more time for that to play out. So off the cuff, that's how I see it.
I like it. You want my therapist take on that one?
Let me hear.
So the you don't know quite what you're getting in Otis. You weren't with that. Automatically, you're not dating, you're not marrying, you're killing Otis off. It was interesting to me that you decided to date Midas because I assumed that you would want to marry Midas because of the robust asset and the exploration upside and the great management team and everything else. But a therapist would say that you're afraid of the older, richer, more well-established suitor coming in and taking her out. And Revival.
I would love to have
Midas in Revival.
I would love to have someone come in and steal Midas away from me. Believe me.
All right, good stuff. That was fun. Midas, Revival, Otis, Hydro, Tesla, Hive. Thanks for playing along. What else is going on in the world?
I mean, there's all kind of stuff. We got a long list of things to talk about. You want me to get riled up, or do you just want to have a discussion?
No, let's get riled up. We did stocks, we did markets for a little bit. Let's get riled up and have a discussion about it.
Well, we've had this newsletter lies topic. It's been sitting there looking at me crooked-eyed for the past 3 or 4 weeks, and we haven't really talked about it. Do you want me to talk about why that's there?
It's funny, I saw that on so just so everybody knows, we freestyle half of this, as you can tell, and then the other half, like, we have some brief talking points. I thought that newsletter lies was just a statement you were making every week, like newsletters lie. I thought you added the S at the end of it, but no, let's talk about it.
No, they do. Newsletters lie all the time. You've seen the promotions liberties are clearly taken, but it seems as though it's gotten worse and worse over the years. The promotions have gotten more and more over the top. The so-called experts on paper have themselves more and more and more qualified, but in real life, I know them in many cases not to be. And so just a blanket warning out there, even for the stuff that we publish sometimes, is the advertising is hyperbolic in many ways, and that's something that as a newsletter editor or publisher you sort of have to live with because that's the nature of the beast. But what I've been seeing lately is just some stuff that's over the top. It's not derived or sourced anywhere in reality or truth. It's just outright lies, and that could be track record where you're claiming you recommended a stock in 2013 or 2014, and I know damn well that you didn't. And that's only because of my seat as a publisher in the newsletter space, that I have my finger on the pulse of various letters and various publishers and various editors, and their track records and when they did things and when they recommended things, or claiming to be an expert in a space, right? When there's no way in hell you're an expert. Like, just think back to the crypto thing in late 2017 and early 2018, where, I mean, bam, you blink in November 2017 and all of a sudden there's 35 newsletter crypto experts. Well, it's like, first of all, y'all weren't talking about this for the past 3 years and all of a sudden you're an expert. And so those are just outright lies. And it's something that you should be, as an investor, if you're a consumer of newsletters, which I know many people who listen to this podcast are, it's just something to be conscious of when you're looking at the promotions and you're reading the editorial, because there's more and more competition in the newsletter space. The promotions are getting more and more aggressive. They're bringing celebrities in some cases where you're basically just buying a pitch from a celebrity, and the service is second thought or second hand. It's not even really the primary concern of the newsletter. It's the primary concern is selling the newsletter. So I don't know where the business is headed, but it's very interesting to me, and just something I wanted to talk about, something I've written about before, but just outright falsehoods that I've seen a lot of in newsletters lately.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. No, well said. And I'll add to that, as somebody that pub writes, obviously, two services published by Outsider Club, which you're in charge of, you're the founder of. I'll be very frank, and we've talked about this privately. The promotions are the least favorite part of the business for me. I love the research. I love putting my money where my mouth is. I love the competition. I love the risk reward aspect. I love all of it. The promotions are continually getting more and more obscene. And I would caution to people that they should look at experts, air quotes, and what they do, not during the bull market. Look at what they were doing and saying, if anything, about their chosen field of expertise in a bear market. Because, I have stocks that are up 3 digits and I have stocks that are down damn near 3 digits because of the last couple of years. And the one thing that I'll say is I participate in the financings that I recommend. I buy the stock of the companies that I recommend. I trade around the stocks that I recommend you trade around for my trader service. And, the most that you can do is get boots on the ground research, be in touch with management, have a real network, get out there and do the due diligence and put your money where your mouth is. If I'm doing that, I can feel good about recommending a stock and explaining why. It doesn't mean that it always goes right. In this business, it oftentimes does not. But at the very least, I can stand by that. Where are the Bitcoin experts that a year ago were, are they guiding people through the bear market? And I don't keep track of that space very much. So I'm genuinely asking everybody that launched a Bitcoin newsletter or a crypto newsletter in the last year and a half, are they still around, or are they still guiding subscribers through this bear market? And what does that look like? You have your finger on the pulse more than I do in that space, Nick. What are your thoughts on that space?
Yeah, I don't think they are. And it speaks to what I was saying about the promotions in that, especially when you have these big webinar events where you have an expert, or you build a sub list and you launch it for just a finite amount of time, where the promotion is only open for a week and the promotion itself isn't even running for a long amount of time. It's all about getting as many people in the door in those 24, 36, 72 hours, and then slamming the door shut. And as I said, the product almost becomes an afterthought. It becomes a numbers game. It becomes, oh, well, if 40 or 50% of the people refund because the product is garbage and there's no follow-up, well, that's fine, because we still got 50% of the revenue, and that's more than enough to pay everybody, cover the cost, and turn still a nice profit. And so in many cases, I haven't seen any follow-up other than the initial package you get right when you sign up, right? In some cases, the service itself is a bonus report package where you're not even getting follow-up emails afterwards. So again, a note of caution: read the disclaimer. Make sure it's a monthly or weekly newsletter, and heaven forbid, don't click the button to order. Call customer service. Call the number that's at the bottom of those promotions and ask questions to a live human being. And I guess that's the best advice I can give on that front. But to answer your question directly, I mean, everybody's different, but I've seen it. I've seen it both ways. I've seen editors that follow up and continue to send out alerts, and I've seen, as I just said, ones where you get no follow up at all.
Do you think, and again, this is my weird brain connecting two things that probably don't have anything to do with each other, but this just popped up. Do you think the polarization in our political discourse is influencing the way that publishers are marketing stuff? I mean, when you look at somebody like Donald Trump that can get away with, saying one thing 1 minute and then saying something completely the opposite of the next minute, and having the same person believe both sides and stand up to other people about both sides of it. Do you think that publishers and the people that write these things look at that and say, oh, we could say pretty much anything, and the likelihood of getting fact-checked is very small? And I only ask that. The other side of that, is somebody like AOC, right, on the left, who is there's a half of me that absolutely loves what she's doing. I'll put a link up, but there was a 5-minute tutorial last week that went viral where she's testifying and asking members of Congress, I believe the Finance Committee, if she was an evil politician and all she wanted to do was get rich, could she do it legally? And she walked everyone through in 5 minutes, and it speaks to, the millennial way of explaining things in a way that everybody can understand. And it was absolutely brilliant. She basically talked about how she could be funded by whichever corporation she wanted to be funded by. That was completely legal. She could then write as many laws to benefit the people she just took the donation from. That was completely legal. And she could also invest in stock of the company that she's writing laws for, completely legal, and then get out there and lobby on behalf of the corporation that she owns stock in, is financing her campaign, and all of that was completely legal. So back to my original question. Again, we'll put a link up there. Do you think that publishers see how little fact checking is done? It seems like, every time somebody checks somebody's accuracy, people just say, oh, no, fake news. And that's it. That's it. We can't have a discourse anymore.
Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, congrats to AOC for explaining everything that's fundamentally wrong with Congress and in a large part how we got in this country where we are today. Maybe spend some more time fixing that instead of coming up with Green New Deals that have no chance in hell of getting through either chamber of the House or Senate.
And should it, in my opinion, but that's another discussion we can have a little later. Yep.
That's right. And then as far as the polarization, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with fear and greed. Those are the two ways that you can sell newsletters. We can put greed aside for a second and talk just about fear. Fear sells promos a whole heck of a lot. You'll remember one of the biggest newsletter promotions there ever was, Porter Stansberry's End of America, right? That was just completely fear-based. I mean, that wasn't really a greed-based promo, and this leads me to the second point. When a Democrat is in office, it's easier to sell newsletters with a fear package because, and again, from my seat as a publisher, I know this, the consumer of a financial newsletter tends to be an older, conservative-leaning, white male. And so when you have either a Democratic majority in the House or Senate or a Democratic president, it becomes easier to sell boogeyman packages. And you still see this to some extent right now. I saw a promo that came out a couple of weeks ago that still had Hillary as the boogeyman. And it's like, man, she's not even in office. She's not even in power. And we still got Hillary as the boogeyman in these newsletter promotions. And so very much we use politics and what politicians are doing and certainly liberals or socialism to scare people into buying newsletter. They're coming for your guns. They're going to tax you into oblivion, pining for the 50s and the good old days and that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to fact checking, I think newsletters know, copywriters know, publishers know that they're operating under free speech, and they're not a regulated financial entity because they're not giving advice to an individual. They're not financial advisors. They're not managing money. And so they're publishing ideas. That's how we view the business. We're publishing ideas. People can take our ideas or they can leave our ideas. But we're just publishing ideas. And then last thing on the promos is, and this is the positive side of the promos, is it allows people like us to remain independent. It allows us to say the things that we want to say. And ultimately, that's why people pay us, because we're not Tom Brokaw and we're not Anderson Cooper, and we're not beholden to advertisers and corporations. And we can say, screw this brand, screw that company, F this, F that, whatever it is, freely, because we're only beholden to our subscribers and not to anyone else. And that's the upside in the newsletter business. And that's why it continues to be a business and thrive.
Well put. Well put. Let's continue with AOC because I find her fascinating. I talked about her 5-minute primer on everything that's wrong and corrupt. As far as power goes in the U.S., the other side, which is the side that the other half that I really don't like, is, the politics of attacking the rich, right? That seems to be the campaign motto that Democrats want to lose on this go round. I, for the life of me, cannot understand. We talked about Howard Schultz and how immediately he was attacked, despite the fact that he didn't even announce he was running. He announced he was looking into it and considering it and was testing the waters. I hear Bernie Sanders, and I like a lot. I've voted for him in the past. I like a lot of what he has to say, but there's a lot that I don't like recently. And it's mostly centered around the fact that it seems like the left wants to run on a platform of attacking the rich. And that has real consequences. Amazon just pulled out of New York this week. They were going to build this big, huge mega center. It was going to provide 25,000 jobs. The excuse that Amazon used was that there was too much hostility from politicians, mostly, of course, from the left, about the $3 billion in tax subsidies that Amazon requested and was granted in exchange for building out this mega center. What the left, for the most part, has failed to point out is that those $3 billion in tax subsidies were going to generate $27 billion for the local economy, and that most of that $3 billion in subsidies came through a reduction in future taxes once they started generating revenue and jobs. Most of these 25,000 jobs were projected to pay approximately $150,000 a year, which even in New York, it's not chump change. So again, I think that the left is overplaying their hand. I think the right is smart to capitalize on that. I think that neither party cares about you. And I really do think that people like AOC and Donald Trump are the precursor of the institutions that need to get burnt down being burnt down.
Fourth turning, turn, baby, turn.
That's it. That leads me to another question. No, I'll let you comment. Yeah, I'll keep going.
I know. Well, there's a lot to comment on there. Yep. Geez, where to start? One, AOC was tweeting the other day, I think in reference to Howard Schultz, something to the effect of, how come no one asks billionaires when they decide to run for president why they didn't have to work their way up from the bottom of the political class or whatever, why they didn't have to be a mayor or a senator or in the House or something. Like people are asking me, I'm speaking in AOC's voice now, and somebody tweeted at her because they've accomplished a hell of a lot more than being a bartender in the Bronx. And it's like if you got to be a billionaire, clearly you have some sort of intelligence, some sort of prowess to operate under a legal framework and a financial framework to become successful and employ people, and so that itself lends credence. And so I don't know. That's my take on AOC. Attacking the wealthy. And as I've said before, perhaps on this podcast, I think the left is going to out-left itself because they're going to let themselves become a caricature of socialism. And the networks, frankly, are helping that by giving AOC so much face time. And that's going to be the attack point for the Republicans. It's going to be you vote Republican in 2020 or you get socialism. That's how the thing's going to be framed. And just one note that popped up this morning, we saw that Bill Weld, former Massachusetts governor and previous VP on the Libertarian ticket, is going to throw his hat in the Republican primary ring, which I certainly welcome. So let's move on to, I guess, the New York thing, where I had seen a lot of people talking about how much it was going to raise their rents, for example. How much is the rent going to go up next year? How much worse is the traffic going to be? And now I'm going to jump around again. How much is it really going to pay off? You mentioned how many jobs it was going to create and how much they were going to pay. But there have been studies now time and time again that show that when corporations bend over backwards like that when governments bend over backwards like that for corporations to come and set up shop, it never really is as good as they say it's going to be initially. Just look at the Foxconn thing in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, where they were supposed to build a giant factory and manufacture all these things there and create so many thousands of jobs. And then they got all the tax subsidies and they said, oh, nope, we're not really gonna manufacture stuff here. We're just gonna do a bit of designing and we're only gonna hire engineers, not really any blue collar jobs like we promised initially to get all those tax incentives. So I'm not sure that bribing companies like that, and I would view it as bribing, is necessarily the right path to go down. It's not really it's the antithesis of a free market, in fact. And so I'm not really for those giant handouts by local governments, city governments to attract those companies. And I'll put a link up to this I'm going to talk about. There was a City Lab study the other day that showed just what I just said about how the jobs never equal the tax subsidies that the companies are promised to come. But then this was the most interesting part.
Yep.
They had a survey of the mayors, and the mayors agreed that it never works for other cities, but it works for my city. That was like the sentiment of the study of the mayors. So they asked them, should governments be giving companies this much tax breaks and tax subsidies to attract business to their respective cities? And all the mayors said no, but when it was their city in question, they said it was okay.
Yeah, it's different when it's you, right?
And so that's just my take. I don't know if the people of Queens and Long Island are happy or not, because on one hand they're not going to get the jobs, but on the other hand they're not worrying about the rent and the other stuff. But I definitely thought it was interesting that people got boisterous enough to make the world's largest company back down.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting times for sure.
No doubt about it.
Let's talk El Chapo, guilty to the surprise of nobody. I'll get on a little mini rant here. So he's guilty. We knew that. He was a drug trafficker. We knew that. He was exporting tons of drugs into the U.S. We all knew that. What's interesting to me is that despite testimony, none of the politicians he paid off are indicted. None of the law enforcement agencies on the U.S. side who sent the guns to Mexico that fueled the drug war, none of them are guilty or indicted. Zero dent has been put into the flow of drugs to the U.S. because we're not really addressing the demand issue in a responsible way. And we're not really, addressing the flow of drug money everywhere else in a responsible way. So, when there's testimony that this guy paid a president over $100 million in bribes, and every governor that he was influential in, every governor in the states that he was influential in, and nobody's indicted, it leads me to believe that it's all bullshit. It's all a show. It's let's feel good about the war on drugs because one guy whose organization is still as strong as ever now gets to spend the rest of his life behind bars. I mean, it's a dog and pony show, right?
Yeah, I'll let you rant on it if you want. I don't have much more to add. The war on drugs has been a major failure. You know where I stand on that. I think I know where you stand. I'm a libertarian. I think we should legalize. I think the Portugal model has worked out. I've seen the personal ramifications of the opioid epidemic, and I think legalization with rehabilitation as opposed to incarceration is definitely the way to go. But the government's not there yet, clearly. Working there a little bit, state by state in some cases, and a little bit with criminal justice reform on the national level. If you saw that a couple of months ago, and then Trump mentioned it again in the State of the Union last week or the week before, whenever that was. And so it's starting with marijuana, and hopefully that momentum can continue. But the El Chapo is clearly just, well, you said it best, a dog and pony show.
Yep. Moving on. Jessica Chastain, one of my favorite actresses and a very, very active activist, if that's a phrase, is calling out airlines for how they pay flight attendants. And I learned some things, right? The power of Twitter. I learned that flight attendants don't get paid during boarding or delays. So if there's a 3-hour delay, if you're stuck on the runway, when these young men and women or older men and women in general are helping you with your bags, they're not getting paid at all. How is that legal? And we'll put a link up to her stuff, but any clue there? Were you aware of this?
You know, you reminded me that I was aware of it, but I had forgotten about it. I think I read about it a couple of years ago, and I don't recall why that is, but yeah, it doesn't seem fair. What are your thoughts?
Well, the answer, the reason why it is, goes back to another outdated law, and it goes back to my point earlier about how we got to challenge institutions and stuff that's on the books, right? It goes back to the Railway Labor Act. It was passed in 1926. It was amended in 1936 because, we're keeping up with the times. And it outlined the rules for the bargaining process between management and labor unions. So it prohibits the unions or management from making any changes in the status quo without a release by the board. So the bottom line is somebody's losing on the negotiating table and getting their ass handed to them, because it's even worse when the flights are canceled. If the flight is canceled, not only do they not get paid for the time while they waited for that flight to get canceled, but they have to go find another flight and lose all of the hours and hope that they can find another trip to make up for it on a different day. So you can literally be at work the entire day and not make a cent off of it. That seems illegal as hell to me. And if it's not, it sure in the hell should be.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the airline group needs, or the flight attendant group needs a stronger lobby, or I'm not sure if they're unionized or not, or a stronger union, or they need to, do what Denver school teachers are doing.
Tell the people what they're doing. I thought it was great.
Oh, I mean, they're going on strike for the first time in a long time to get higher wages, and the schools aren't closed down. They're covering it in some capacity with substitutes, but I mean, the Colorado teachers are going on strike.
Good. Let's talk about a politician I actually do like for the most part. I always have. Republican Senator from Alaska, Lisa Murkowski. Everybody that listens to this and knows me knows I lived in Alaska for 17 years. She's one of the few politicians there that I thought was active, that I thought was balanced, that I thought was working on behalf of her constituents and continues to do so. She recently testified to Congress about the need for critical metal security and how they are the building blocks of a robust economy. And I want to quote her really quick. She said, "Whether we realize it or not, energy and minerals fuel our 21st century economy and standard of living. Access to energy and minerals impacts everything from healthcare to poverty levels to defense readiness and the strength of our manufacturing sector. In the past decade, we have seen a dramatic increase in domestic energy production and a corresponding decrease in our dependence on energy imports. This remarkable shift has led to the substantial economic benefits we're seeing here at home, while giving us options to help our allies achieve a level of energy security. In contrast to the energy sector," and this is the important part, "our nation is headed in the wrong direction on mineral imports. This is our Achilles heel that serves to empower and enrich other nations while costing us jobs and international competitiveness. Over the past several years, our committee has sought to call attention to our reliance on foreign nations for minerals, and the administration has taken several important steps, but we must complement their actions with congressional legislation." So we imported 50% of 50 mineral commodities in 2017, including 100% of 21 minerals. This should be a national security issue.
Amen, sister. If it can't be grown, it's got to be mined. You want me to tell you where my brain went?
Yep.
So the U.S. has 98 operating nuclear reactors, and you know how much uranium they're going to mine this year, Gerardo?
It's a very, very tiny to non-existent amount.
It's enough to power less than one of those 98 reactors, which means we are dependent on foreign sources of uranium for more than 96 or 97% of our uranium needs, and that's 20% of our baseload clean electricity in the United States. It's a very precarious place to be in, and that's on down the line, whether it's rare earths or lithium or vanadium or molybdenum or whatever it is. It's on down the line. It's every single one. You read the quote. She's 100% right. It's been a problem for years. In some cases, industries are acting on their own, right? Two industries have done it now with a clause of a Commerce Department
intervention.
Yeah, legislation or whatever you want to call it, where they can petition the Commerce Department to investigate whether There's a national security risk emerging because of how reliant we are on foreign sources for these metals and minerals, right? The aluminum industry has done it, and the Trump administration acted. The steel industry has done it, and that's why we got the steel tariffs from the Trump administration. And now the uranium industry is doing it with UR Energy and Energy Fuels having filed a Section 232 petition with the Commerce Department. Wilbur Ross, the head of that department, announced an investigation a couple of months ago. Congress has had a couple of hearings about it at this point, and there should be some sort of decision made in April, May, June of this year, with perhaps a bit of a delay because of the shutdown. But good to see this at least being debated in Congress, as opposed to whether cheeseburgers should have their own national holiday or not. These are the sort of things that we should actually be talking about. And hopefully she gets some traction because look, we need to get the exploration going, the development going, and the construction of this going. And in some respects, it is. There's one project I'm involved in, a vanadium project in Nevada, that was the first to be selected by the Trump administration for fast track permitting. And so it's happening in some respects, but clearly not fast enough. And just one more thing that should be a tailwind for a bull market in commodities.
Absolutely, which is my bread and butter. But you speculate and obviously invest heavily in that sector as well. And I think this speaks to the opportunity when, this goes back earlier to the promotions. When you see a promotion from me that says, I think you can make 1,000% on this stock. If you see that, I actually believe that, and I'm probably buying the stock on the back of that. Markets like the uranium market that are very cyclical and that are very violent, excuse me, to the downside and the upside, just have a track record of doing that. You can see 3-digit losses in a bear market, and you can absolutely see 1,000, 2,000, 3,000% gain. So hopefully the overview there from Ms. Murkowski provides a little bit of context as to the opportunity, because there's a lot of money to be made in the critical metal sector. And, I'd rather be a year or two early on that than a year or two late.
That's right.
Want to do some feel-good stories? I got one that I think people that are fond of the marijuana and fond of the alcohol, and maybe not as fond of the God, it might make them believe that there is a God looking out for them.
Let me hear it.
Here we go. So this is a good one. This made me smile. The University of Quebec looked at the discharge records of 320,000 patients, not a small study, who had a past or current history of abusive alcohol use. And it found that alcohol abusers who didn't use weed had about a 90% chance of developing liver disease. That's 9 in 10, obviously. Whereas light cannabis using heavy drinkers had about an only 8% chance. Now, for dependent cannabis users who drink a lot, there was only a 1.36% chance of developing liver disease. So if you want to significantly decrease the risk of liver disease and you drink often and in bulk, there's your answer, everybody. All you need to do is smoke a little marijuana to go with it, and a lot, and your chances go from 90% to 1.36% of developing liver disease. I found that fascinating.
Oh, sorry. I went to get my marijuana.
I'm assuming you haven't had a drink yet because it's early, and I think they work in tandem. So, yeah.
Oh, so I got to go get a drink too.
Yes. That's the way it works. I thought it was fascinating.
That's good. Let me hear the other part of that, because there was another study as well.
Yeah, and this one may not be so good depending on whether you're trying to have kids or not. But they also find out that marijuana increases fertility in men. Who knew?
And not only increased for that study, it was habitual use. So if you're smoking 2 joints or more per week, they found that men who did that had a higher sperm count. And not only that, but if you read all the way through the article, they also had higher testosterone. So manly men with higher sperm count smoke 2 joints a week is what I took away from that.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. I think the science evolving is fascinating. It is interesting to me. And going back to AOC, she had some great questions about, whether or not the first big corporations and legislators that are profiting from the cannabis craze were the ones also that mostly profited from the disproportionate application of drug laws in our country. And it was really funny to see the senator she was grilling stutter a little bit. So again, it goes back to, she's brilliant, she's intelligent. And then there's, the other side of it where there's some things where I think she's overplaying her hand, but who knows? Maybe she, like people say of Donald Trump, maybe she is a brilliant negotiator and is going to start at 70% and 50% wealth tax and, only to work it back. Maybe that's the new paradigm that we're in. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Do you have any feel-good stories, Nick?
I'm looking forward to it with bated breath. I think 2020 is going to be as much of a reality show as 2016 was. And as a neutral bystander, I am, my wife is tired of me saying this, I am just reveling in it. I don't watch TV anymore because I can just read the news and it's like, my freaking dopamine sensors they're giddy with all the shit that's going on. It's like, I told you motherfuckers 10 years ago this shit was going to go down. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, on the marijuana study. Well, it's a good thing because what was the old wives' tale, right? If you smoke dope, then you can't have kids because your spermy is going to go away. And on a serious note, what's happening now is, now that medical marijuana is more widely accepted and now that it's legal in more places, now we can do actual peer-reviewed university research on it, which is something that really hasn't been done over the past, call it 50 or 60 years, because it's been a controlled substance. So now more research is getting done on the molecules, the THCs, the CBDs, the CBNs, the CBGs, and we're finding out that certain CBDs are good for anxiety, and certain ones are good for appetite enhancement, and certain ones are good for having anti-seizure properties. And so go, science, go, science, go.
Couldn't have said it better. Go, science, go. CBDs. What were the other 7?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of them.
It's kind of like
there's 11 of them or something.
It's kind of like when Trump goes billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions.
That's how rich he is, right?
That's how rich he is, supposedly. Yes, that's what he would like for you to believe. Any feel-good stories, Nick? You usually lead this segment. I just had that one that made me smile from ear to ear,
So I'll give you, it's not a feel-good story, I guess it kind of is, and then just some informational stories, and we're probably getting close to the end of our time. Yeah. One I saw, you'll recall, I think on the first or second podcast, we talked about the farming game and how there was this global farming game that you could virtually farm, and they were having a competition for it, and there was like a $250,000 prize or something, and that was just a game. But I saw this week that agriculture is actually using new technology and algorithms and such for actual farming, not for virtual farming. And so because it was Valentine's this week, I saw a story about Tinder for cows. And it's not about, how sexy the cow moves or how cloven her hooves are. It's about how much milk production they have and how fertile they are and what the sperm count of the bull is. And then the dairy community
brings the boys to the yard.
There you go. That's exactly right. So if you're looking to breed your cows and you're looking to get the best calf with the highest milk yield, these cow, beef, and dairy cow farmers are putting all this information on Tinder for cows so they can find the best match for cow breeding. And I thought that was pretty darn cool.
That is pretty darn cool. That was neat. I enjoyed that.
And then informational stories quickly. The North Pole is moving. I did not know this. Apparently, when we first found the North Pole, it was somewhere in North Canada, but it's been moving, and it moves apparently like I don't know, a couple of meters every couple of days or something like that. And so scientists are continually having to update where north is. And now it's not in Canada anymore. It's like out in the ocean somewhere. And they're saying in so many years that north, where the actual north points on your compass because of the magnetic field is going to be all the way over in Russia. That's how much it's moving. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit. It's something I didn't really understand, but that I was fascinated by. And I'm not the only one because scientists know that the magnetic fields, the magnetic poles, true north is moving, but they have absolutely no idea why. So that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and if they don't know, I sure in the heck don't know, but it is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, I'll leave that there.
Did you see the seafood sauce in Newfoundland?
You mentioned it. I haven't dug into it. Enlighten me.
Oh my gosh. So I guess like 20 or 30 years ago, this fish sauce company set up shop in Newfoundland because there was an abundance of seafood that wasn't good for anything but making fish sauce. So they took their factory to where their supply was, and they built a fish sauce factory. Well, the fish sauce factory ended up going out of business years ago, like more than a decade ago or something. And everybody left, clearly. But the facility is still there, and so are the giant vats of fish sauce. And they are apparently so rotten and so putrid that the entire town can smell them. And not only can they smell them,
Ooh.
but they're causing respiratory issues and they can't open their windows. And in the story of the one lady I read, on some days she has to drive like 100 kilometers to her daughter's house just to escape the smell. And here's the interesting part. The government can't come up with the money. It's going to cost millions of dollars or something to get rid of these giant vats. The company's obviously out of business. Um, and it sounds like the government's saying there's nothing wrong, but clearly there's something wrong because one, nobody's allowed to go in there without a hazmat suit. And two, there is no rodents anywhere to be found in or around this building. And if the mice and the rats don't run in, there's something very wrong. So a serious sort of lighthearted story in that rotting fish sauce is funny, but probably not for the residents of that town.
Definitely not for the residents of that town. Yeah, not good. Not good. I'm glad I didn't dig into that story. I'd much rather hear it from you.
Oh.
Well, Nick, you got anything else? We want to pick a stock of the week. I'm going with Revival Gold just because I found it very impressive, as I mentioned earlier, that they could do a $5 million financing in this market without a warrant. And there's people lined up at the door to participate. It speaks to the team, the leadership of Hugh Agaro, Chairwoman Diane Garrett, and everybody there. I think in the next year to 2 years, that project that company's stock will trade at multiples of what it is today, and that project will have a lot more than the 2 million ounces they've outlined thus far.
Well said. I'm bullish on Revival Gold. If I'm picking a stock of the week, it's not going to be a resource stock again for the second week in a row. I'm going to pick Eastside Distilling. They just came out with a new line of whiskey. I guess I should give you a bit of a backstory. They launched a line of whiskey called Redneck Riviera with a platinum-selling country artist named John Rich, who has been the celebrity ambassador of the brand, and has done one heck of a job as such. It's been one of the most successful launches of a liquor brand ever, and that's not just coming from me or Eastside Distilling. That's coming from industry and marketing executives I've talked to in the liquor space. It's now been a year since that liquor line launched. It's in nearly 40 states. And we should see the sales numbers from that hitting the books in the upcoming quarter numbers that haven't come out yet. So that's positive. They just launched a new premium line on the back of that called Granny Rich Reserve, which has not even been sold yet. They're just now pushing it out to distributors. They acquired a mobile canning line. A couple of weeks ago. It's the only mobile canning line in the Pacific Northwest and all of Oregon and Idaho and Washington and things like that. And so if you know anything about mobile canning, it's how all these new microbrewers are getting into the space because they don't have the capital to buy their own canning line, just enough capital to buy the equipment to produce the beer. And so a mobile canning line is a pretty lucrative business. Eastside now owns the only one in the Pacific Northwest. And they've announced they're making inroads into the cannabis beverage space as well. So a lot going on with Tiny Eastside Distilling. All seems to be going pretty well. They did an incredibly boneheaded financing in November that the stock has continually been punished by, but I think the upcoming numbers will be enough to get them out of that malaise. That was a long stock of the week, but there it is.
No, that's a good overview of it. Little side note, it's trading currently at $5.95 US. It's got a 52-week high of $9.25. They've executed beautifully on everything but allowing the bankers to get cozy with them. But I think there's a lot of runway there, and it's a company that one of the few outside of the resource space that I actually follow and have owned. So we'll leave it there.
There you go.
Mr.
See you next week.
Have yourself a great week. Happy belated Valentine's Day to everybody. Episode 6 of Bizarro World. Have a good one.